was a 28-inch piece of equipment with a handle, an oval frame, tightly interlaced strings, with the power to derail my whole life. It was a tool to my happiness. It was my tennis racket. I was only 3 years old when I first held a tennis racket as big as I am, but watching my brothers play in the adjacent court was all it took for me to dedicate the next 14 years of afternoons, weekends, and breaks to the sport. Tennis has never been just a sport for me. It's always been a way of life, and as you'll come to understand, this way of life has shaped me as a person and has taught me one of the most valuable lessons of my life. Tennis has meant dedication and commitment, missing social outings and being mentally and physically drained. But that was my choice. My coach's words, being a better tennis player means pushing yourself beyond your limits, were music to my ears. I started competing when I was 8, winning tournaments when I was 9. I was asked to play for the national team when I was 10, played in the number 1 position in leagues when I was 11, and by 12 years old, I was ranked number 1 in the country. After that, we moved to California, and the success continued. I won the first 7 tournaments that I played, and then I was asked to play for the Northern California team. I found myself on a high. I felt untouchable. I was doing so well, so consumed by the game, so what could possibly go wrong? There are a lot of talented tennis players, but what made me a great player was that I was always willing to put the extra effort in to succeed. Tennis has formed my characters. It taught me that not only to be independent, but to listen to my body and my thoughts and be in sync with them. And I believe that so much of life can be applied to tennis. Essentially, life is tennis. Tennis is life on a 78 by 36 foot playing field. Mm-hmm. If your opponent's unfair, you have to deal with that. If the referee is making calls they don't agree with, you have to deal with this, because you will face injustice everywhere in life. And every time I stepped foot on the court, I had a new challenge to deal with, a new obstacle to overcome, a new puzzle to solve. And every single time I overcame an obstacle, it gave me the greatest sense of satisfaction. I found myself on a high. I felt untouchable. I was doing so well, so consumed by the game, so what could possibly go wrong? Tennis has always been a constant in my life when a lot of other things were changing. I was so attached to the sport that I would go back to it every spare minute that I had. Whether it is to escape familiar circumstances or just relieve stress after a busy day at school, I knew I could turn to tennis because it would just be me, the racket, and the ball, and everything else would be put on hold. I would get into the zone, where I was just focused on hitting the ball back and forth and back and forth. I would focus on my setup, I would focus on my motion, on just the contact point, and on hitting the ball at the perfect angle. And in that moment, the whole world goes quiet. Everything that I can hear is just the squeaking of my shoes on the court and the echo of the ball that I had just hit. And 5 minutes on the court, and all my worries would evaporate. So I found myself on a high. I felt untouchable. I was doing so well, so consumed by the game, so what could possibly go wrong? There's no doubt that seeing myself improve as a person and as a player over the years has given me so much incentive to work even harder. I had a goal and I was fixated on it, and I knew that I had to put in a lot of effort to achieve that goal, and I really was willing to. So I said I would continue practice at as much as I could. I would continue to compete at the highest level, and I would continue to pursue what makes me feel whole. And I had a plan. I had a whole plan laid out. I mean, Division I tennis was a given at that point at the level that I was playing, and turning pro was just within reach. And that was the plan. That had always been the plan. And so I found myself on a high. I felt untouchable. I was doing so well, so consumed by the game. So what could possibly go wrong? Everything. Everything came crashing down in a matter of 10 seconds. 1 second, I stepped on the court to battle for a championship title, and the next second, I was going through my forehand motion, and my racket just drops. It drops to the ground, and these 10 seconds, they felt like 10 hours. Everything was moving so slowly until I was just snapped back to reality by shooting pain all the way through my wrist and my arm. And in that moment, in that very long moment, I knew that all my future plans were destroyed. All 14 years of blood, sweat, and tears were just for nothing. You know that feeling when your heart drops into your stomach and you feel so nauseous that you just want to throw up? And I was feeling so many things at once, but I couldn't process anything. And so I found myself on the lowest of lows, and I felt vulnerable. I wasn't doing so well. I was so consumed by the game, and everything went wrong. The mistake that I made was not listening to my body's signals on multiple occasions, and that's the greatest error that an athlete could ever make. And that came at a cost. I pushed myself past my breaking point, thinking it was a sign of strength, when in fact it was just a sign of weakness. And while injured, I was initially at my worst, both physically and mentally. My world had just turned black, like pitch black. And I had all this time on my hands that I didn't really know what to do with. And so I started moving on, trying activities that I had never had the time for, and just biding my time and just counting the seconds until my body would heal and I could return to what I loved the most. It was a 28-inch piece of equipment consisting of a handle, an overframe, tightly interlaced strings with the power to derail my whole life. But you know what? It didn't. It gave me a whole new life of balance, and tennis was the tool to my happiness until I learned not to give anything so much control over me. Don't get me wrong, every time I step on a tennis court, I'm like a kid in a candy store, but injuries happen, and plans get derailed. And you have to just learn to accept what you cannot change, and that is when your road to recovery starts. So if you ask me now, what could possibly go wrong, I will tell you that absolutely nothing, because I have found my balance. I will push myself past my limit, but never past my breaking point, because if I'm not living a life of balance, I don't think I'm living at all. And so that injury taught me how to live. It taught me to live by accepting what I could not change, and no matter how much it destroyed me or shattered my world. And that, let me tell you, is when the real healing starts.
Okay.
No, I don't.
We don't have time to redo it.
Oh, yeah. I write really big because I don't want to.
Holy moly.
No.
It's like the Ten Commandments.
No, I know. I write really
on
big.
Stone.
And I space them out, and they're small cards.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't use
them. They're 3 by 5.
So...
They're not that small. No, you didn't. You didn't use them that much. That's right. All right, who's next?
Me.
Go.
I'll take your
Okay, Lauren 1. Retaining her status.
Wait, I think it might be easier if I sit there because I never.
We'll just have to do like musical chairs.
There we go. All right, so Lauren, how'd your weekend go?
It was good.
Pretty good.
I put pink in my hair, so it was fun.
I noticed a little bit of that.
It's temporary though, so it's gonna wash out.
Okay, where's my stapler? Is it over there? I got it.
Did I give you my outline?
Yes, you did.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, you did. Okay, so why don't you put pink in your hair?
Me and my friend, I mean, my speech actually talks about hair, so it's kind of funny. But we
talked
just
about
one
hair.
night we're like, let's put temporary pink in our hair, so we did. So,
Okay.
yeah, why not?
One of my
As long as it's temporary.
It's temporary.
Okay.
one of my
Washes
ESL
out.
students put green in
I
hers,
feel like that's not green. Is not
and
the
it
best color.
well for black hair, it actually accentuates it almost because it's
How does
really
it
a
even
bright
show up?
green, but it's in the very back of her hair.
Oh.
It's on either side. It's not in the front. It's in the very back, and you have to look to see it. But it's really kind of cool. All right. Which one of you guys stole my stapler?
Would you like me to go get you one from a different room?
No, because it's not my stapler.
Oh.
I want my stapler.
Oh.
And I think I just had it, but I'm so discombobulated in here, I don't know where it's at. Oh well. I guess I didn't have it. Because
saw
yours
it in
had
the
the
other
paper clip on it. Huh?
I saw it in the other classroom. Because I remember I had to staple.
Yeah, it was in the other classroom, but I thought I'd put it in. I was just throwing stuff in here, so I was trying to get out of there as fast as I could. Aha! There that little stinker is back there. Okay. Now life is complete. Okay. Okay. So here we go, Lauren. You ready?
Yes.